Hello, how are you doing? In this section, we will see about what is cascading style sheet. CSS stands for cascading style sheet. Cascading style sheet is to format the layout of your web page. When you want to make your web page more attractive and appealing, you use cascading style sheet in your HTML web page. So with CSS, you can control the color, font, and size of a text. So you can adjust the color, the font size, font weight, and font styles. The size of the text can be adjusted by CSS. You can also adjust the spacing between elements. So if you want spacing inside of the element or outside of the elements, you can use spacing mechanisms in cascading style sheets. We can also arrange or determine how elements are positioned in the layout in our web page. So we can make some of them fixed, or we can make elements to position at the bottom, top, right, center. So this all behaviors can be applied by cascading styles. You can also change background colors, background image can be adjusted by cascading styles. Different displays. So if you want your web page to be displayed in different devices, mobiles, tablets, desktops, or large screens, we can use CSS to manage those display properties. So CSS provides us a bunch of other possibilities. In order to apply CSS, here we follow the following syntax. So the first one is selector. Selectors can be anything. For example, here we use h1 as element name as a selector. Then, after mentioning the selector, inside the curly brace, we put a declaration. Declaration is simply a property value pair separated by a colon. After each declaration, we put a semicolon, which indicates the end of the declaration. Here, for example, we use a color declaration, a color property name, and a value of blue. So we can use a color name, or we can use a hexadecimal color, or HSL values, or RGB values. The other one is mentioning the property value for font size, and the value is 12 pixels, or we use other measurement units for font size. So the syntax, the basic syntax to apply CSS is selectors, then declarations. In one selector, we may have a number of declarations. As we see, we have two declarations for color and font size. We can also add other declarations and these selectors. So selector can be element name, ID selector, class selectors, or other selectors. We'll see it in the coming classes. So the selector points to the HTML elements you want to style. There are a number of elements in a single web page. In order to style those elements, we use selectors. The declaration block contains one or more declarations separated by semicolons, as we see. Each declaration includes a CSS property name and a value separated by a colon. And multiple CSS declarations are separated by semicolons, as we see. So here we have a paragraph selector, which select paragraph elements, all paragraph elements, and we have two properties, the color and text alignment properties. The color property is to define a text color for paragraph elements, and text align property is to adjust the alignment of a text. So we may make it center or left or right or justified. So there are different types of selectors in CSS, and we can generally categorize it into 5 categories. First one is simple selectors. Simple selectors also contains 3 selectors. These are can select it HTML elements by name using the element name, or by giving ID. If you want to make unique style for one element, we use ID, or if you want to group elements together and give a group style, we can use class elements. So ID and class are simply attributes for elements So when we want to apply those, we add those ID attributes or class attributes for elements. The other elements are combinator selectors. Combinator selectors use the relationship between elements. For example, parent and child relationships, parent sibling relationships can be applied here. So there are four types of combinators. The other selector, we call it pseudo class selectors. So pseudo class selectors, when we want to apply a style based on some states, for example, hovering state or selecting of text, we use pseudo class selectors. So if you want to apply style for the entire element, you use pseudo class selectors. Pseudo element selectors are a little bit similar to pseudo class selectors, but they differ that it only applies the style to some part of the element. For example, in pseudo class selector, we may apply a, a hover effect for the whole element, but in pseudo element selector, we apply for the first line or the first text or other things. So part of the element is applied style shades. You can also use attribute selectors. Attribute selectors select an element based on the attributes, the ID, or if you use, for example, form, we can select based on the type attributes of the form input text. So we can use those attributes for styling the elements. So here we see the CSS element selector. The element selector selects HTML elements based on the element name. So as we discussed earlier, here we have p elements and we have text align property and color property, and we give the value which is separated by colon. Always element selectors use the name of the HTML elements. The other selector is the ID selector. So the ID selector uses the ID attribute of HTML elements to select specific elements. The ID of an element is unique within a page. So the ID selector is to select one unique element. To select an element with a specified ID, we use hash sign, hash character sign, followed by the ID of the element. For example, here we have ID named para1, which is preceded by hash. Hash indicates that we are selecting based on the ID of the element. So we give text align and color properties with value center and red respectively. So the para1 element, ID element will be selected and applied a text alignment of center and a color of red in this case. The other selector is a class selector. So when we have a group of elements which show similar behaviors, we use the CSS class selectors. CSS class selectors used to apply for groups, and class is identified by period character followed by the class name. So as we see here, for example, the center is the name of the class, and dot indicates that we are using CSS class selector. The other selector is a universal selector. When you want to apply some behaviors for the entire HTML element in a web page, we use universal selectors. Universal selectors are identified by asterisk. So here we use asterisk and we give for all elements text alignment of center and a color of blue for. So all elements get text alignment center and their color becomes blue. So when we have a number of elements, we use a group selectors. The grouping selector selects all HTML elements within the same style definitions. The group selectors separate each select with a comma. For example, we have H1 element, H2, and a paragraph element. So all these elements have a property of text alignment and a color with red value. So in order to group selectors, we can use H1 element. We can use element name separated by comma. Then the declaration section continues. So in order to apply CSS in HTML elements, we can use three ways to insert CSS inside HTML. The first one we call it inline CSS, the second one internal CSS, and the third one is external CSS. In case of inline CSS, we use a style attribute for each element in order to apply a property or a style sheet for each element. So if we have, for example, 100 elements, we apply 100 attribute values for those elements, and we write each style for those 100 elements. So it is a little bit time consuming and not a good way to apply style sheets. The other way to apply a style sheet is called internal CSS, or we call it embedded CSS. Internal CSS is used to apply style sheets for a single web page. So when we want to apply a style for a single web page, we use internal CSS, and it always should be inside head element. So inside the head elements, we will have a style tag element. So that style tag will be inside head elements. The other style sheet is external style sheets. So when you want to apply a single style sheet to the entire website, you use external style sheet. So it is time-saving approach for style sheets. So inline style sheet. An inline style may be used to apply a unique style for a single element. To use inline styles, add the style attribute to the relevant element. Then the style attribute can contain any CSS properties. For example, here we have heading 1 and paragraph elements. So we apply a style attribute, and inside the quotation we apply property value with semicolon when we finish the declaration, then property colons and the value semicolon, and we can apply other attributes property value pairs if you want to apply. So if we have 100 such elements, we have to apply in this way, and it takes some time to apply. The other style sheet type is called internal style sheets. So an internal style sheet may be used if one single HTML page has a single style. So if you want to apply a style for only one style sheet, you can use it one web page. You can use internal CSS. The internal CSS is defined inside the style elements, and it should be inside the head section. Always internal CSS are put inside of head elements. So inside of head, there should be a style tag, and we can use element selector name, which is selector name. Then we can apply the property. Selector name, we can apply the property. So we can use different selectors as we see earlier, element selectors, ID selectors, class selectors, grouping selectors, or universal selectors can be applied in this style sheet, internal style sheet. The other style sheet type is external style sheet. With an external style sheet, you can change the look of the entire website by changing just one file. Imagine if you have hundreds of web pages, we can use one file to change all the style sheets. Each HTML page must include a reference to the external style sheet file inside of the link element inside the head section. So those 100 web pages should have a link, one line of code. We call it a link tag that should be applied inside of the head element of each web page. An external style sheet can be written in any text editor. You can write it, and it must be saved with a .css extension. As an example, here we have a web page, and there is no style sheet. But in the head, we see about a link tag, a link, and it have a rel attribute and href attribute. Rel indicates that always style sheet. So we are using cascading style sheets, and which will be indicated by the style sheet value. And href indicates the location of your cascading style sheet. So we have my style.css file inside the same folder or directory the web page is. So my style.css looks like the following one. My style.css. So having a body element selector and h1 element selector. So in external style sheets, there is no need for style tag. Simply we put the selector, then the value declaration, selector and declaration. So there is no need for applying or writing style tag here. So you can share this style for hundreds of web page by simply putting this tag, the link tag.